I'm Savannah, the greenhouse manager here at Tallahassee Nurseries, and I get a lot of questions daily about houseplants in the greenhouse, and we asked you guys on social media to tell us what some of your burning houseplant questions were, so we decided to answer some of those today. So the first question that I wanted to talk about today was how to get rid of fungus gnats. Basically, fungus gnats show up when you have most likely overwatered your houseplant. They like to lay their eggs in wet soil, and as soon as that soil dries out, they no longer want to be in the soil. So that's a really good way to just get rid of them, is to let the soil dry out and then be cautious about overwatering in the future. But if they are, sticking around, another good thing to try would be mosquito bits. Mosquito bits is a product we sell here in the garden center. It's basically a bacteria that kills mosquito larvae, but it will actually also kill fungus gnat larvae. So you can sprinkle it on the surface of the soil, or you can soak it in water and then water your plant with that water, and it will kill any larva that's in the soil. But when in doubt, just let your soil dry out, and that should get rid of the fungus gnats. Another question that I get a lot is about caring for Talanzias, also called air plants. Air plants are epiphytes, so they grow in trees in really humid environments. So bringing them inside the house, which is a dry environment. So a lot of people think that air plants don't need any care, which they don't need any soil, that's true, but they do need light and they need water. You need to be misting your air plant or soaking it, totally submerging the plant in water, or a combination of both, depending on how much light your Talanzia is getting and how dry your indoor environment is. Not watering your air plant enough is a big reason that people kill them. I know I've killed them because I forgot about them and I didn't water them, but they do need water and they do need bright, indirect sunlight. On the topic of watering, a lot of people ask me, why are my leaf tips and edges turning brown? And unfortunately, there's a lot of reasons why your leaf tips could be turning brown. It could be too much water. It could be not enough water. It could be inconsistent watering. It could be that your plant really doesn't like the minerals in tap water, and it would really benefit from maybe giving it some distilled or rainwater. That's Calatheas especially, that's a big one for them. Well, they need lots of humidity, and they really like distilled or rainwater. So basically what's happening when your leaves are turning brown at the tips is water, through transpiration, the plant's taking up water from the roots and pushing it out to the leaves. And if your plant doesn't have, enough water, then that water isn't going to make it all the way to the tips of the leaves. And the same thing for if it's getting too much water. If your plant is having root rot, it's like your roots are drowning. They can't function to get the water where it needs to be. So most likely it's a watering issue. Maybe it's not getting enough humidity and the tips are getting kind of crispy and brown because there's not enough humidity. So basically it's a lot of reasons could be causing it, and you really just need to self-diagnose. Or am I overwatering? Am I underwatering? Am I just being sort of inconsistent all over the place with my water, to help determine why your leaves are browning. If you're unsure why your leaves might be turning brown, you're always welcome to come into the greenhouse and ask us, and we can help diagnose what might be going on with your plant. Another question you guys asked is, do all of houseplants need fertilizer? And the answer is, houseplants aren't heavy feeders. They're inside, they're not getting a ton of sunlight, but most of them would benefit from a little bit of fertilizer. A lot of the potting soils that we sell here have worm castings and bat guano and good natural organic fertilizers in them, but if they've been potted up for a year or two, they may have depleted all of that fertilizer in the soil, and they might benefit from a repot with fresh soil or just adding some additional fertilizer on top, especially if it's a blooming houseplant like an orchid or an anthurium. A little extra fertilizer might help it perk up and grow to look its best. A lot of people come in asking for easy houseplants. You know, this is their first houseplant that they've ever had and they want something easy. And there are definitely a few go-to for easy, low-maintenance houseplants. One is Pothos. If you want something nice and trailing and tropical, that's a really easy one. It doesn't need a lot of light, but if you give it good bright light, it's going to grow really long and fast for you. It's also not super picky with water. I let mine at home go 2 weeks in between watering, so it's kind of forgiving. Another easy one is Sansevieria, also called mother-in-law's tongue or snake plant. That one is an excellent low light plant. Also, it's really low water. It can go several weeks without water. Another similar one is ZZ, low light, low water. Basically just leave it alone and it'll grow and be beautiful. And when I say low light, that means that a plant can tolerate lower light. Now, if we're talking corner of a room with no window, no light, no plant is going to survive long term in that situation. If you need to move a plant into a bright spot, you know, every once in a while, that might be helpful if you really want it to live in this dark corner. But no plant is really going to live long term without any light. Another very easy to care for houseplant is a Dracaena. It's also considered low light and low water, so it's a great one for new houseplant parents. Something to consider about all of these plants is that there's different colors and varieties for all of them. So if you're not super into the typical golden pothos, maybe you could try the neon pothos or the marble queen. And as far as Sansevieria and Dracaena, there's also lots of colors and sizes. So no matter what look you're going for, there's a plant out there to fit your style. How often do I need to water my snake plant? And whenever someone asks me that question about any plant, I ask them, how much light is it getting? Because if you have a snake plant that's right in front of a western facing window that gets tons of sun, it's going to need to be watered more often than if it is in, pulled back from the window, in the corner, not getting much light at all. So always keep in mind, if a plant is getting less light, it's going to need less frequent watering. We got another question online asking why my golden pothos lost its variegation. Now, I can't say for sure, but oftentimes when variegated plants lose their variegation, it could be because it's not getting enough sunlight. So if your variegated plant is starting to fade or lose its variegation, I would suggest moving it closer to a brighter window. So another question that I get asked all the time is how to care for orchids or how to get my orchid to rebloom. I think the main thing for getting an orchid to rebloom is to make sure that it's getting enough bright light. And this is just talking about a phalaenopsis, but enough bright light to get it to rebloom, and also probably giving it some fertilizer would be important to get it to rebloom. And a care tip for orchids is water. Phalaenopsis, they like water, but they don't want to be wet all the time. So you just have to understand how they grow their epiphytes. They grow in trees, so their roots are exposed to the elements, and when it rains, they get soaked, and then they dry out and they get rained on again. So they just don't want to be soggy and wet all the time. So giving them a nice porous, coarse medium to grow in, like an orchid bark, is ideal. Giving them a thorough soak and then letting them start to dry out before you soak them again is really key to a happy orchid. And you'll be able to tell if your orchid is happy by the roots. If the roots are silver in color and they're firm, that is a happy, healthy root. If it is mushy or if it is crispy and brown, that root is dead. And that might be an indicator that you might need to change something in terms of care for your orchid. Thanks for watching, guys. If there were any questions that we didn't answer today, feel free to send us a message on Facebook or Instagram, or stop in the greenhouse and ask us yourself.